On Capitol Hill are sending a clear message to China, and it is all about we're not selling our oil to the Chinese Communist Party.
Last week, the House passed legislation restricting sales to the CCP. Some are calling it an issue of national security. And our Washington, D.C. correspondent Rachel Knapp has more.
On this vote, the yeas are 331 and the nays are 97.
With almost every House Republican and at least half of the House Democrats in agreement, they passed legislation aimed to restrict the sale of oil from our Strategic Petroleum Reserve to entities that are under the ownership, control, or influence of the Chinese Communist Party.
China is ramping up its purchases of crude oil from Russia and the U.S. to boost its own reserves.
Last year, the Biden administration tapped into the reserves, releasing an unprecedented amount. The administration stands by their decision on releasing barrels, citing the Russian invasion in Ukraine contributed to oil prices climbing, which also contributed to inflation climbing to some of the highest levels in decades. And so the administration tapped into the reserves to offset price increases.
President Biden successfully used the SPRO to lower prices at the pump and provide relief to American families.
Republicans argue sales from the reserve to China is a threat to our national security.
America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve, once the world's largest stockpile, has been depleted to the lowest level since 1983.
Democrats argue that the House should instead pass legislation that would include restricting the sale of oil from the reserves to other countries the U.S. has sanctioned, like North Korea, Russia, and Iran. However, analysts say the impact of the sale from our reserves on our economy would have been the same regardless of where those barrels had ended up.
SPRO barrels sold to Chinese firms represented only 2% of all the oil we sent to China last year, only 2% from the SPRO.
Lawmakers say the focus should now be on rebuilding our reserves. In Washington, D.C., Rachel Knapp reporting.
Rachel, thanks. And that bill now heads to the Senate, but it's unclear if the Senate will actually take up that legislation.